Welcome back to another episode of the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, the show that brings you real stories and expert insight to help families navigate senior living with confidence. I'm Dale Corpus, your host, and I'm a senior transition specialist and real estate expert based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I help families navigate the often overwhelming process of transitioning a loved one into senior living, especially when it comes to what to do with the home. Today's guest is someone whose work touches the lives of thousands of seniors across Contra, Costa County, and beyond. David Linnell is the executive director of Meals on Wheels Diablo Region, an organization known for delivering meals to homebound seniors. But as you'll hear today, they offer so much more. We're diving deep into the real impact of Meals on Wheels, the emotional support, the wellness checks, the crisis interventions, and how their team has become a lifeline for vulnerable seniors. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, where we help families navigate senior living, real estate, and everything in between. Hosted by Senior Transition Specialist Dale Corpus, this show brings you expert insights, real solutions, and stress-free strategies to make senior transitions simple. Ready to dive in? Let's go.
And we're back, everybody. David, welcome to the show today. Good morning, and how are you?
Morning, Dale. I'm doing great today. That's a busy Sunday, but I'm doing great.
It's a busy Sunday too for me. I got all my workouts in, and it's cool that, again, we're really devoted to just helping seniors by doing this on a Sunday. So I appreciate your time, by the way.
No worries.
So David, can you share how you got into the world of nonprofit leadership and senior services?
Okay, great. So I got my first experience working in nonprofits was working in the hospital setting. I originally was a chef.
Okay.
And I was introduced to working in a hospital through a local community member that I had when I was living in Michigan.
Okay.
I was living in Port Huron, Michigan, and I was a member of the Blue Water Chefs Association. And a really good friend of mine was the president of the association, and I was the secretary, and he worked at the local hospital. And he was really talented. So I always asked him, why aren't you owning your own restaurant? Why aren't you practicing as a chef in the culinary world in terms of that restaurant side? And he shared with me that he works at the hospital because he's the production supervisor in the kitchen, and he gets to work at 5 a.m. He's done at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He's there for his kids when they get off the bus, makes dinner, does their homework, puts them to bed, and he's free on every weekend. And it's sort of like set a light off in my head. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going about this whole work in food, in healthcare the wrong way. Because at that time I had a 7-year-old son, and he would ask me on a regular basis if I was going to make it to his soccer games. Of course I can't in the restaurant world because you're working all the weekends, especially holidays. So I just thought for a better life balance, I would give this healthcare thing a try. Sean got promoted to director and moved to Pennsylvania, so his position opened up. And when his position opened up, I applied for it and got it. So my beginning of working in healthcare, I was a production supervisor at a hospital in Port Huron, Michigan.
Okay.
So I was there for about 5 years, and then I was offered a job as a director in a large CCRC in Greeley, Colorado. And so when I made it to Greeley, Colorado, I learned firsthand what it was like to have seniors come and live in a institutional environment, mm-hmm. whether that was independent, assisted living, or long-term care. And assisted living and long-term care, I really felt, and it was sort of evident to others, that those seniors were moving into those spaces prematurely. In the United States, we don't do as good a job as some of the other countries around the world, right, that make sure their parents are taken care of. They bring their parents into their home no matter what. They find a way to take care of them. I think in the United States, there's this thing called a 2-income family, and 2-income families are really sort of required with the cost of living. And so I think in a 2-income living environment, sometimes if mom lives out of state or in a different location, instead of bringing mom to live with them to take care of them because there's no one home anyway during the day, they have a tendency to move them into assisted living or long-term care, in my opinion, prematurely.
Mm-hmm.
So, these residents is what they're called in that environment. When a resident comes to you and they didn't want to leave their home in the first place, they can get depressed very quickly. So it was a priority of mine to have the staff really embrace the new person that's coming to the facility, get to know them, hear their stories, and sort of wrap your arms around them. We need to make them feel welcome and loved so that they don't get as depressed. When family comes to visit under those circumstances, their loved one usually asks them to take them home and tell them that they don't want to live there. And unfortunately, the family can't do that. So they just say, Mom, you need to stay, or whatever the situation is. And when Mom gets upset, she wants to go home, she'll say, "I'll promise I'll be good." Things like that are just heartbreaking because it has nothing to do with behavior. And so it's really, really important to wrap your arms around them. So this didn't sit well with me. And so when I was in Colorado, that particular kitchen prepared the meals for Meals on Wheels.
Mm.
And because they prepared the Meals on Wheels, I got to learn more about their actual mission was. And their actual mission is to allow the seniors to age in place as long as possible, to provide them at least a biweekly minimum welfare check on the days of their deliveries. And in some cases with Meals on Wheels, that's a daily welfare check when they make the deliveries for the meals.
Mm-hmm.
So if you make sure their food's secure and that they're doing okay, and they've got someone to talk to at least once a day or a couple times a week,
Mm-hmm.
that senior is able to stay in their home and age in place. So I really sort of fell in love with that side of the mission. We're doing everything you can, putting all of the services in place to allow them to stay in their homes. That's really what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first introduction to the real mission of Meals on Wheels.
Got it. What are the requirements for someone to qualify for Meals on Wheels?
It's interesting. It's the funding typically for standard home delivered meals. That's paid for mostly through the Older Americans Act, which has been established since the early 70s. So when that funding comes down to the agencies like us through the county, their criteria for the Older Americans Act is the person must be at least 60 years of age and have a lack of ability to go from their homes to go shopping, or their inability to stand on their feet and prepare their own meals. It actually has nothing to do with their financial status.
Oh.
So the person has to be a minimum of 60 and be what we would consider through, we have to qualify them as a client. So once we go through the qualifying process just to verify that they are in fact homebound, they're in the program. We do offer some of our clients that are post-discharge from hospitals that are not stable enough to be able to go out, shop for groceries, or prepare their own meals in their own kitchen, so they can be on the program temporarily. But for the most part, if you're homebound, you're over 60 years old, you qualify. Most Meals on Wheels have other contracts to provide meals to the young adults with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So we can serve in the same capacity anyone who's under 60, so long as whatever their determining factors are allows them or doesn't allow them to leave their home, so we can make sure that their food's secure and safe in their spaces.
Okay, perfect. Now, you talked about this a little bit, the mission. I wanted to delve into that a little bit more. What's the core mission of Meals on Wheels Diablo region, and how does it differ from what people usually assume?
Well, our primary mission is to serve those under the Older Americans Act through the AAA, which is the Area on Aging for Contra Costa County, is to provide service to that contract. And that contract, as I originally described, are those over 60 years old and are homebound. So that's the primary foundation for the organization's mission. Outside of that, we want to create social environments. So we, as a Meals on Wheels in our county, have 7 cafes. And they're usually operated out of senior centers. And we provide a couple meals a week out of those senior centers. And it's for those who just really want to have a meal and break bread with another senior. So it's a social aspect.
Okay.
And it allows them to break up some of their isolation or loneliness. They may not be homebound, but they do want to start to have more socialization and have their meals with others their same age. And so it gives them someone to talk to. So we provide probably about 1,300 meals a week out of our cafes. And you can come and go as you please. So we see some people every day that the cafes are open, and we see some people only once a month.
Got it. And I think this conversation is valuable because just earlier on, you mentioned that there's really you don't qualify in financial status. I always thought you guys did. So that's just a misconception that
It is a
I had.
misconception.
I mean, and I just recently learned that Meals on Wheels does more than just meals as well. So again, Meals on Wheels is known for meal delivery, but what are the other programs and services that people may not know?
Well, when we go through the assessment process, when we go into a senior's home for the very first time, where it goes beyond the meals, once we cross the threshold, we really like to know the environment that person is living in and make sure it's a safe environment.
Okay.
I would say 9 times out of 10, there's something that we resolve within their space, whether it's a trip hazard, making sure their fire detectors are working, change the batteries, whatever the case may be. We'll go through the home and first we want to see the client and their ability to physically get around in their own space.
Okay.
So we have them walk from row to row and ask them if they have any difficult standing once they sit. And usually when we ask that question, if they answer, they have a little trouble bracing themselves when they stand, coming out of a chair. That's a huge indicator that you need to have a grab bar in the bathroom for when they're using the services in the bathroom. And then we'll look at the shower situation, make sure that there's some sort of a shower mat. The bottom of the tub is not slippery or the shower space is not slippery. So we'll put some sort of grip on the bottom of the shower so they won't fall in the shower, as well as grab bars. And if we'll look at bed height and some other things in their bedrooms to make sure that they don't accidentally fall out of bed or fall when they go to stand after waking up, if they're a little groggy when they wake up and lose their balance. So that's one of the things that we offer, is to make sure that, if we're going to allow these seniors to age in place, let's make sure that they're doing it safely. And then after we talk to them through some interviewing processes, we'll find out how comfortable they are living alone. And in most cases, I would say that there's a level of isolation that is causing some depression in our seniors who don't get to see people on a regular basis. So we offer a program, a friendly caller and friendly visitor program, where we align volunteers to work with those seniors. So they'll call each other or sometimes visit each other and play games or just socialize. And in some cases, those volunteers will do some shopping for them. They'll go out and get them toiletries or maybe even some snacks or other grocery items they may need. It's not as routine enough for them to be not on the program, but it is routine enough for them to get things that we don't deliver. So that's another thing that we offer. When we meet our clients, another service that we offer, when we meet clients through our cafes, we also really try to pay attention to their mobility. And if it looks like there's a need for some additional exercise to make sure that they continue to stay strong, we offer exercise classes and yoga classes. So, and these are usually run out of the senior centers. So we offer that to try and keep them mobile and active and on their feet as much as possible, because we know they're going to be safer in their homes as a result.
Now, how do your team members or volunteers play a role in identifying emergencies or early signs of decline?
Oh, that's a really great question. So one of the other things that's really important for agencies like Meals on Wheels to do is to have the same delivery driver make the deliveries to the same client. Because they can get to know them personally. They can know that Mrs. Smith is different today than she was yesterday. As soon as you start to see there's some variances in either their disposition or attitude or voice, you can go into it a little bit, ask a few questions like, how are you really doing? and so on and so on. And if we start to identify there's an issue, or if the driver starts to identify an issue, they have the ability to call back to the office and have a social worker or one of our care managers reach back out to the client
Hmm.
and see what else is going on. Sort of try and be a little bit of a safety net, or something that may be on the rise. Um, and usually, if we start to see that a client is starting to decline, we'll start to get family more involved. We'll
Hmm.
give them the heads up. So
Got it.
that's usually how we go about that.
Now, what impact have you seen from your fall prevention or elder abuse prevention programs?
Um, I would say the result of that is that we have less incidences of falls within our client
Okay.
population. Like, so less hospital visits,
Hmm.
or emergency visits, by sort of being in front of it.
Hmm.
So that's a huge benefit. It's hard to quantify. You don't really know
Hmm.
if someone would have gone to a hospital if you avoid them going to the hospital in the first place. But you know that your percentages of incidences are down when you have these programs in comparison to before.
Hmm.
It's really hard to quantify, but you definitely notice the difference in the number of occurrences with your total population of clients you're serving.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, you guys do cover a wide area. Like, how do you coordinate care across such a wide region?
No, that's a great question too. So we cover about 75% of the county. There is another Meals on Wheels on the west side of the county that
Okay.
provides meals. They don't provide the other services we provide.
Uh-huh.
So we fill in those gaps. So we have the free recaller program and visitor program on the west side of the county, even though their meals are coming from another Meals on Wheels.
Hmm.
So how we cover it is we identify locations as part of like a spoken hub model.
Hmm.
So we have the food comes on either one or two large vans, and they go to distribution locations, and they'll drop off the food for delivery and stack it by route at that distribution location. Then we have another volunteer who does the coordinating of drivers picking up
Okay.
their deliveries. So we like to have those distribution locations as a hub and spoke for that local area. And if we
Okay.
have to add more routes, we can do it from that hub. And if it gets overwhelmed, then we'll add another one. We'll break it up and turn it into two. But we make sure that we have the right distribution locations for all of our routes. And our routes sort of grow and shrink it over time. We can have a particular area of a town be very impacted for a period of time, and then some of those clients will either come off the program or whatever the case be. So those routes sometimes shrink,
Hmm.
and then we have others that expand. So we just have to be very nimble about how flexible we need to be with our routes and our distribution locations.
All right, that all makes sense. Now, I want to segue into questions related to community impact and partnerships. My first question in this is, what does it mean to be a true wraparound provider for seniors aging in place?
Being a true wraparound service provider, you think about what does a client or an aging senior in their home really need?
Hmm.
What they need is to make sure their food's secure,
Hmm.
make sure they're safe. And once you make sure they're safe, do they have some sort of socialization that breaks up isolation and loneliness?
Hmm.
So if you can focus really on those primary three things, a senior can do pretty well in their own home if they have someone that they can consider a friend, that they can talk to on a regular basis, they're not hungry, and they're safe in their space. So as they age in place, if there's a need to use the grab bar in their shower on a more regular basis, it's already there. So that's the wraparound services that we provide. Now, it comes in many forms.
Hmm.
It comes through our mobility and classes to make sure that they're physically able to age in place. And obviously our meal deliveries make sure that they're food secure.
Hmm.
And then by doing the safety and welfare checks through their homes, we try and make sure that space is safe.
Hmm.
So that's the wraparound services that we have. Sometimes we're connected to their hospitals or their care management systems.
Hmm.
So there is some communication that crosses over back to hospitals and so on. So that's sort of how we're connected to be the eyes and ears for the care management team.
Okay.
But that's how I would describe our wraparound services.
Now, how do you measure impact or outcomes in the lives of the seniors you serve?
Well, I think the impact of the seniors, for the seniors is one, we survey them on their meals and their
Mm.
services. And typically when you're a senior and you're in this environment, someone's knocking on your door, wants to talk to you or handing you free food, you're usually pretty sad.
Yeah.
Someone comes in your home and goes, yeah, I'm going to put a grab bar in your shower. How much is that going to cost? Nothing. So, I would say 90% of our clients are elated that we exist and we're there for them. And we make these connections so that they have friends and they have places to go and socialize and have meetings in the senior centers. It's just pretty hard to tip that over and make it into a problem.
Yeah.
They're pretty happy. So I think the more that the more seniors we're able to touch and keep out of the institutions, that's where our biggest impact. So if we're carrying a pretty decent sized number of clients, and right now we're carrying around 2,000, with the potential of that growing. I won't get into that right now, but
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I'm sure you have a lot of success stories.
yes,
Can
we do.
you share a story maybe that really stuck with you, one that shows the difference?
Oh, yes, sure. I think the most tragic stories that we really, and I say tragic as they could have been tragic, is that many times we'll go to a senior's home and we'll knock on the door and they won't answer. And then we'll knock again and they won't answer. And then we call into the office and say, Mrs. Smith is not answering her door. And then someone from our office calls into the house and there's no answer. Then we call family members. No, mom should be home. So then we call APS or we call the services fire department or an ambulance or whatever the case may be. And we do a welfare check where they'll actually break into the house and we'll usually find that client on the floor, unable to get up. So because we're knocking on their door, 2 times a week or even as many times as 5 times a week, we're really that safety net for something that could have gone wrong.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times in the 10 years I've been working for Meals on Wheels, how many people we've actually found on the floor, got them services and got them to the hospital that if it wasn't for us, I don't think they would have made it. So that is a huge impact. And family members are overjoyed when they find out mom had fallen and the person that found them was their Meals on Wheels driver and made sure that they got to the emergency services and got the care they need. There's
Wow.
no bigger impact, I think, than that.
Yeah. And these families are so grateful to have you guys around, to be able to you're checking on them. The frequency which you're helping them seeing these seniors is a lot more than families are even visiting them. And that's so important as well.
It is.
And, just all that human interaction as well is helping them.
I think another very big impact that we have, and it's not on the same level of life-saving, but it is in many ways makes them healthier,
Yeah.
is the meals that we provide, because of the Older Americans Act too. I don't want to take total credit for it. It is required to serve a very nutritious meal and the menus and the recipes have to be verified by the county. So we're preparing and serving very quality food with great nutrition. And usually it stabilizes the clients who are living in their homes. These seniors sometimes will eat snack food because they don't have the ability to prepare food. So they're eating like junk food cereals and junk food and lots of white bread and so on, or whatever the case may be. And when they've eaten our food over a period of time, they actually report that they're healthier, that they'll lose a little bit of weight, but it's good weight to lose, and so on. So they report that they actually feel good from eating our meals.
Okay. Got it.
So that makes an impact as well.
I like that. Let me switch over to questions related to addressing challenges and expanding reach. What's the biggest challenge Meals on Wheels is facing right now?
I think the biggest challenge we have is, not to be too political, is the current administration is on the verge cutting a lot of these dollars if they haven't already. They're changing the entire system, and our fear is that we are going to have to do without. And I don't want to get to the point where, as the leader of the organization, we have to cut back on the number of seniors we're serving. I don't want to knock on a senior's door and say, unfortunately, we can't serve you anymore because we don't have the funding. And I think that, this many years past COVID, there's a lot of donor fatigue. And you don't want, I really fear for going into this change in funding coming out of the federal government and then asking the community to make the rest of the lift that the federal government is pulling away from. I'm not sure whether we're going to be able to fill that gap. So that is a fear. That is a fear across almost every agency in the United States right now, is that federal funding, and what are they going to do to bridge the gap? We have some ideas on what we want to do. It's something that I'm trying to bring to the organization, is to diversify our revenue streams. I think one of the ways that we can diversify our revenue streams is to build county-wide commissary kitchen that Meals on Wheels would run, and then we would be able to provide meals to the other community-based organizations, hopefully be able to provide better food at a lower cost to them. And maybe we could put a small margin on top of that, even though we're still saving them some money. It'll generate money for us. I think having our own kitchen, because we're one of the few Meals on Wheels that doesn't, that we'll have even more control over the food that we prepare, and some of the costs. I think the notion of having a county-wide commissary kitchen could be beneficial financially for lots of reasons, and one of which would be purchasing power. Whenever you start to buy product, you buy a couple cases of something, it's one price. You buy a pallet of that same product, it's another price. If you buy a tractor trailer of it, it's a different price. So wherever you can leverage your mass buying power, and when you're serving an entire county, you will be buying some products by the truckload. And the differences in prices is pretty dramatic. So the larger that kitchen space is, the more it's automated and has some things that allow for efficiencies, we can drive the cost down and use the savings, hopefully, with this, if the money's still there, use the savings to serve more people. And that's really what the motivation is. So we're actively looking at trying to really work out what we need to do to build this kitchen, and how it can serve the community. The county has committed some Measure X dollars to do a feasibility study for this project. Feasibility study will start in July. That study will consist of reaching out to all the nonprofits across the entire county and find out who is preparing and serving food. And for those who are preparing food, how are you getting it? Are you making it yourself? Are you buying it? What is the process for that individual nonprofit? And could you benefit from something like this commissary kitchen concept? So once we determine what the entire need is across the county for meals and who our biggest partners would be, then we'll be able to determine what size kitchen this needs to be. Once we decide what size kitchen it needs to be, the next step would be, how are we going to fund it? So one of the ways that we're looking at funding it is through new market tax credits. So new market tax credits are a federal program that helps banks lend money to nonprofits or other, you don't necessarily have to be a nonprofit to take part in new market tax credits, but the banks that participate in it want typically to use their new market tax credits that are available through them on projects like this, where new market tax credits require you to build or refurbish existing buildings in neighborhoods that need a lift. So there's a heat map that the federal government has that shows you where new market tax credits are available. And there's a good portion of Contra Costa County that is marked as available for new market tax credits efforts. Northern Concord, up into Pittsburgh, Antioch, Martinez, all the way out to Brentwood, and even all the way to the west side of the state in the Richmond and El Cerrito area. So there's lots of opportunities. Once we figure out what size and scope kitchen needs to be, then we'll start to look for a potential industrial park that may have, where there may have been a previous maker of something,
Mhm.
I know in this area, the Campbell's Soup was a pretty large manufacturer in the area, and they've got some warehouses that they have left behind. They may have all of the infrastructure we would need to come in and flip that space, turn it into this kitchen. We could probably get it for pennies on the dollar versus buying property in the Bay Area and then trying to build a building from scratch in the Bay Area. We are going to benefit tremendously if we can take an existing building that isn't being used and flip it. And then we're going to bring jobs to that space. Good quality paying jobs where there's a living wage. We want to be able to offer living wage and living benefits to those people. Because that's a necessity in the Bay Area for people to survive. So we can lift up a neighborhood. We can turn an abandoned or potentially unused building, flip it, offer jobs where they're needed, and then we're going to prepare food that could service the entire county for their nonprofits and make the dollars go as far as possible. That's
Like, there's a lot of good things I'm hearing. You're serving seniors, you're also uplifting communities and providing jobs. There's a lot of creativity that's coming into this as well. I love that. What are the misconceptions about Meals on Wheels you'd like to clear up?
misconceptions about Meals on Wheels. Meals on Wheels has a really good reputation. Most people know it really just primarily for food for seniors. I think the misconception is that's where it stops.
Mhm.
As we described earlier, it goes beyond that. We like to say that we're more than a meal. That's a common tagline for us.
Yeah.
That we cross the threshold. Once we cross the threshold from just handing you a bag full of prepared meals to really kind of understanding you as a person and caring for whatever needs that we identify through our relationship with the individual. So we're more than a meal. We cross the threshold and we have the ability to check in on a loved one for family members that are not present.
Okay. Now, how can the public, especially those not directly in senior care, support your mission?
I think the public can go to our website. There are links to make donations. You can make really small donations if you only want to do a couple dollars. That's great because it goes towards paying for a meal for a senior. And we're really good stewards of the money that's donated to us. We really try and make it go as far as possible.
Okay.
So if an individual wants to go to our website and find a link and make a donation, that would be incredible.
Okay. So outside of fundraising opportunities like that, do you have any volunteer types of opportunities?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have volunteer opportunities that they'll be posted on our website also. They're constantly changing. Our volunteers have a tendency to work for a period of time and then they want to take a little time off because after all, they are volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some volunteers that will work for a couple of months and then they go and do something different and then they come back. And then that time when they depart, there is now an opening. So we are constantly looking for volunteers and our services are expanding. So we're always in need because our numbers are growing.
Yeah.
There is this thing that is out there called the gray wave. That is the boomers coming into retirement and needing services. So there's an expectation that our numbers are going to expand greatly in the next few years. So we're just trying to prepare for that.
Got it. Yeah. I the first time I heard it called a gray wave, I typically hear it called a silver tsunami.
Silver tsunami, that's another one.
It's the same, yeah. On a related note, if you had more funding or volunteers tomorrow, what would you expand immediately?
Oh, there's some areas that we have a lot of hidden clients.
Yeah.
I would spend that money on really trying to get the word out because, some seniors, they're not tapped in like others. We're working with seniors right now that are not as technically, they don't use the internet as often.
Right.
They don't use text. Right. They're not paying attention to podcasts.
Right.
These are new things to them.
Right.
So I don't want to say that they're out of touch, but they're not really in tune with all the available services that are out there for them.
Hmm.
And if they're someone who, some of our seniors don't even own cell phones, and landlines are non-existent anymore.
Hmm.
Uh, if I had the funding, I would do a lot of outreach to make sure that we can reach that senior who's living in a neighborhood on the corner that is quiet and no one's noticing that she's in need of help in her own home.
Hmm.
Um, Typically, when I talk to people, we're in a room. I'm just generally out and at a mixer of some kind or whatever. I'll ask, do you have a senior living in your neighborhood? And of course, they say yes. Have you checked on her? Do you know Mrs. Smith? Have you gone over and say, hey, Mrs. Smith, it's been a while since I've actually walked up to your front door and had a conversation with you. Just want to check on you. You may find that she's in need of something. So
Hmm.
if you find out that your local community seniors, the ones that are living on your street or in your neighborhood, if you could check on them and if they need anything, if you think they're food secure or food insecure, excuse me, give us a call and we'll reach out and try and provide services. And then we'll go through the entire gamut. We'll make sure that they're safe in their homes, that they're not suffering from isolation and loneliness. They're not a referral to us because no one's noticing that they need us.
Yeah.
So get the word out. I would advocate for that. And then of course, then if I had the funding, I would get more trucks and more food and start to service the growth of that population from that outreach.
Yeah. Now, what advice would you give to family members trying to support an aging loved one but feeling overwhelmed?
Advice that I would give is start with us. Start with Meals on Wheels or an agency like us and develop that relationship with the agency as a loved one. Say, I'm calling you. I think my mom needs meals, and check in with us because we're the ones that are walking into your mom's house. We can give you a lot more information than maybe she would over the phone. And that could give you a sense of security because if the second person says, yes, I was in your home, your mom's doing well, the house is clean, everything looks nice and tidy, she seems to be in good spirits, she seems to be enjoying the meals. The loved one on the other end of hearing that gives them a lot of comfort and security that mom is okay, even though they can't see mom because they're maybe in a different state or wherever they may be. So there's a lot of support that's given to not just the client, but to the entire family as a result of the services we provide. And I would suggest starting with us and developing a relation to communicate with us on how mom or dad is doing, or both for that matter.
Okay. Out of curiosity, what keeps you personally motivated to do this work?
Hmm. Um, Lots of things. I get calls and letters from clients, family members. I think I sometimes go to the senior centers
Hmm.
and have lunch with them, and they're a hoot. They're a lot of fun. And then they get to tell you firsthand how much they benefit from us.
Hmm.
When you sit down at a table, we have one, pardon the expression on this one, they would know, they hear this, they'll know who they are. There's a group of on the Concord Senior Center that they're called the Golden Girls. And, and they are so much that. So when you sit down, you can't help but laugh and have a great time with them and have fun, but they will all stop and become very serious and tell you that the senior centers and the meals that they provide and allow them to come together and have a meal and have that level of friendship is so big and so huge for them. And it's hard to walk away from that and not be affected. Like, yes, we're doing the right thing. This is fun. I enjoy this.
Yeah. I have one fun question to ask you, if that's okay.
Sure.
What's one thing most people don't know about you?
Oh, don't know about me.
Yeah.
Um, I love the outdoors. I recently, in the last 5 years or so, have taken up fly fishing.
That's cool.
I went through an unfortunate period in my life, and it still affects me today, is that I lost one of my children.
Mm.
So a good friend of mine decided that he was going to help me with my grieving process and said, hey, we're going to go fishing. I'll take you out. And I had never done it before. So he took me to a location and they sort of taught me a little bit about how to fly fish. And so I was in this beautiful spot out by Groom Creek in the northern part of California at the time. And I'm standing in this creek and I'm listening to the water and I'm looking at the beautiful trees and everything that's around me, and it's so peaceful and quiet. It isn't about catching fish. It's about having a space to meditate and sort of work through things. So I just fell in love with it. I love to just go camping, get out in nature, and just be a part of it. It really sort of recharges my battery. Other thing I guess you would say is I think originally told you that I was chef, so I like to cook. I spend a lot of time at home cooking or entertaining friends. And I'm also an artist. I do pottery.
Cool.
So I do ceramics. I haven't done it for a while because I've been busy doing other things, but that's something I really enjoy.
Very cool. One of my last questions is, for anyone listening who wants to get involved or support your mission, how can they reach you, reach your office, and learn more?
Well, they can go to Meals on Wheels Diablo region at our website online. It's easy to find. Just a general search should get you there.
Okay.
And click on all of the services that we provide and how you can become a part of our agency and the services that we provide, either through donations or volunteerism, or just see what's going on in your community. A way that you can also help us is knock on your neighbor's door. If you know you have a senior, at a minimum, you're going to enjoy just going there and saying hello, engage. And if it turns out that they may need service, give us a call and we'll see what we can do to help.
Awesome. Well, David, thank you so much for shedding light on what Meal on Wheels Diablo region really does. Your leadership and compassion are helping thousands of seniors age with dignity, independence, and connection. And I hope this conversation opens more eyes to how vital this work is. And for those of you watching, if your loved one is considering senior living and you need to figure out what to do with their home, let's talk. Schedule a free consultation with me by clicking on the Calendly link in the video description on YouTube. Learn more about my services at www.simplifyseniortransitions.com. Have a quick question, DM me on Instagram at SoulByDale. And if you found this interview helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who needs it. And if you're enjoying the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, it would mean so much if you could leave a quick rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It helps more families find this important information and grow our community. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, David, for being a guest on the show. Yeah. And for everybody else, I'll see you on the next episode of the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast.